Imagine standing on a coastline thousands of years ago, watching the sea move further inland every year. Forests vanish, villages disappear, entire worlds swallowed by water. Now imagine surviving long enough to tell the story, then your children tell it, and their children after them. Until thousands of years later, civilizations across the earth still remember the same catastrophe. Not perfectly, not exactly the same, but close enough to leave behind a pattern. A flood, a warning, a world destroyed. And somehow, people separated by oceans and centuries all told remarkably similar stories. Why? Tonight, we explore one of humanity's oldest and most unsettling mysteries, the Great Flood. Flood stories appear across the ancient world. In Mesopotamia, there are tales of God sending water to erase humanity. In Greece, legends speak of civilization being destroyed beneath endless rain. Ancient Indian texts describe a great deluge swallowing the earth. Chinese myths tell of catastrophic floods consuming entire regions. Even indigenous traditions in the Americas preserve stories of rising waters destroying earlier people. Different names, different cultures, but strangely familiar themes. A warning, a disaster, a few survivors, and the beginning of a new age. For centuries, many dismissed these stories as simple mythology. But the deeper the researchers looked, the stranger the pattern became. Because humanity has always lived near water, near rivers, near coastlines, near seas that could give life or take it away instantly. And perhaps ancient people remembered something modern civilization has forgotten. One of the oldest flood stories ever discovered comes from ancient Mesopotamia, recorded thousands of years ago on clay tablets. Long before many famous religious texts were written, the story appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh. In it, humanity grows corrupt. The gods decide the world must be cleansed. And so, they send a flood powerful enough to erase civilization itself. But one man receives a warning. He is told to build a massive vessel to preserve life and prepare for the destruction to come. When the flood arrives, cities vanish beneath the water. The old world disappears. Only the survivors aboard the vessel remain. What makes this story remarkable is not just its age, it is how familiar it feels. Because versions of this same narrative appear again and again throughout history, and that raises an uncomfortable question. Why would so many civilizations remember the same kind of disaster? To understand the flood myths, we must go back more than 12,000 years, to the end of the last ice age. At that time, massive glaciers covered huge portions of the planet. But slowly, the Earth began to warm, the ice melted, and the oceans rose. Scientists estimate sea levels increased dramatically over thousands of years. Entire coastlines disappeared beneath the sea. Places where humans once hunted, fished, and lived were swallowed forever. To prehistoric people, this may have looked like the end of the world. Imagine watching familiar land vanish generation after generation, sacred places lost beneath water, villages abandoned, forests consumed by the sea. What stories would survivors tell? And how long would those memories last? Some researchers believe flood myths may preserve fragments of these ancient experiences. Not one global flood, but many catastrophic floods remembered across centuries, and perhaps those memories became myth. Today, much of humanity's ancient past may lie beneath the ocean. At the end of the Ice Age, Shorelines were completely different. Areas now underwater were once dry land, and humans were already living there. This means some of our oldest settlements may now rest beneath the sea. Across the world, researchers continue discovering submerged structures, flooded caves, and traces of ancient human activity underwater. Some discoveries are natural formations, others remain unexplained. And these discoveries continue fueling speculation about lost civilizations. Stories like Atlantis endure because they connect with something deeply human. The fear that entire worlds can disappear, not slowly over history, but suddenly. And perhaps ancient people truly witnessed that kind of destruction, because for them, the oceans really were rising. But science alone does not explain why flood stories survived for so long. Human beings forget many things. Empires vanish. Languages disappear. Entire civilizations are lost to time. Yet somehow, the flood story endured. Perhaps because it became more than history. It became a warning, a symbol of destruction, survival, and rebirth. Across thousands of years, humanity kept retelling the same fear. That nature can erase even the greatest civilizations. And maybe that fear never truly disappeared. Even today, humanity fears rising seas, climate disasters, and environmental collapse. The ancient flood myth still feels relevant because the danger still feels real. And perhaps that is why these stories continue to survive. Not because humanity remembers every detail, but because humanity remembers the fear. The Great Flood remains one of humanity's oldest shared stories, a mystery carried across continents through myth, religion, and memory. Perhaps these stories describe real catastrophes from humanity's distant past. Perhaps they became symbols of survival and renewal. Or perhaps they are something in between, fragments of history transformed into legend over thousands of years. But one question still remains. Why did so many civilizations refuse to forget? Maybe because somewhere deep in human memory, there was once a world that vanished beneath the sea. A world lost long before recorded history began. And maybe the stories survived so humanity would remember what happened. Because myths sometimes endure for one reason. They contain echoes of something real. Today, the story ends here. Or does it? Thank you for watching Echoes Beyond. If you dare to go deeper, like, subscribe, and return, because some truths refuse to stay buried. The end.